All right, I am finally back. You didn't even know I was gone, but it's been a while since I've recorded a video here. We're going to go over a band called Insomnium. I have checked them out once before. It was their album Winter's Gate. Awesome album. Would recommend my video and the album itself. But today, this is off of their album Anno 1696. It's the song Godforsaken. That album has a humongous meaning behind it. We're going to dive into all of that later. It's touching on some pretty heavy themes of witchcraft and witch hunters and Christianity.
Explain your dalliance with the dark arts.
It's not my fault. I was exposed to Harry Potter.
And all of this is taking place in Finland. It's a fictional story, but set in a real time. It's the year 1696, where there was a lot of famine, there was a lot of death, there was a lot of superstition, a lot of fear going on in Finland at the time. And across the world as well. And it took me a while to pick this song. I was listening to the entire album a couple times through, found a couple standouts that I wanted to focus in on, and then I listened to the deluxe album as well. So that's the EP that came after, Songs of the Dusk. And I narrowed it down to 4 songs, Godforsaken and 3 others. So as a fun little contest, if you can identify 2 of the 3 other songs that I had picked, so not including Godforsaken, that was this one, and then there were 3 others. If you can pick any 2 of those 3 that I was going to pick for this video, if you can guess them, I will send you a free shirt. So put a comment down below with your guesses and maybe win you some free threads. That's free threads. Wow, that's hard to say. 2 of the 3 songs that I picked, if you guess all 3, I don't know, I'll throw in a mug or something too if you're interested. So that is the contest. Consider yourself notified. And now let's proceed with the rest of the video. What a voice, and those cool little background sounds sound like pots and pans jangling on the side of a horse walking down a snowy path. Does this win the award for the most beautiful intro to a melodic death metal song? When you hear these harmonies, the answer is yes. Oh my gosh. That is so powerful. Wolfie Boy is ready. Gosh. Can I just take 1 second? That transition out of the most epic sad moment with the blasting and that just dark melody, and then transitioning into something else, that's hard to do effectively, and they nailed it. So this song's so well put together. Let's keep going. I can't get enough of Insomnium's lead lines like this. That is a bounty boy. Might be a girl though, based on the story. Back to so much blasting. Such an Opeth lead right there. And then just back into relentless double bass and trem picking. I said continuous chugging is everything. Continuous trem picking is everything else. With the double bass behind it, it's just so driving, inspirational. And then pulling out all those little melodies and layers in each section. There's so much to listen to. Not the bees! Oh, it's like a beehive on the head. Being able to bring it down to this level of emotion and dynamicism is superb. Oh, right, because I forgot they're setting it up for this, one of the most epic outros I've ever heard. Oh my gosh, I'm getting tingles just thinking about it. It sounds so Scandinavian. And I love it. The soaring, all the layers of voices. Like, this just sounds like tragedy put into music. I don't know how you write music this sad. I mean, I do, but it remains impressive. driving trem and double bass. It's hitting every nail on the head. And then you get your cathartic outro. Too good. So yeah, I picked Godforsaken for a couple reasons. One is the lyrics summarize a lot of the album's emotions and the story, the important things that we're going to talk about here soon. And because it's such a musical whirlwind, there's the black metal elements with the trem picking and those just the darkest and saddest of melodies. They're just dripping with tragedy. Like it just sounds like something awful happened and there's almost no recovering from it. Like you're just so sad. You're so downcast, and it almost evokes fear for me. Like it's kind of like a scary melody with all the pads and like the orchestral like in the background and stuff. It's so powerful. The female vocals, they help it not to be the blackest of all coffee and just to be like kind of dark roast instead of black hole dark roast. I don't know the level of coffee, but the female vocals are a perfect touch. It is so incredibly well written. This was an awesome song. So jumping into the meaning of things now. Their lead singer, Nilo, is a writer through and through. He has made short stories around Winter's Gate, this album, and I think he just writes for fun as well, because this was a short story that he had. He entered it in a contest years ago, won the contest, and then they dusted it off to turn it into this album. He's also a trained historian, and he used that knowledge to help him build the story, build the world, and write the lyrics. So right out of the Winter's Gate, I just want to make it very clear that not fair. This takes a real metalhead to write hard music and do harder work. So I really respect that. So Anno 1696 tells the story of a woman that was caught up in witchcraft. It's told from her perspective. It's told from the eyes of others who help her flee. And it's told from the perspective of a witch hunter and a priest who are pursuing her and, you know, the witches in general. So I want to look at this huge story from two different angles because each one of these has massive implications and they could be talked about for hours. Firstly, there is Lilian's arc. Lilian is one of the songs on the album. And second, we have the idea of innocents that are being caught up in these witch hunts. So I'll talk about that part second. So I don't know all the details of Nilo's short story here, but when you read through the lyrics, you can kind of get a picture of what's going on. Basically, there's a woman, like I said, she might have werewolf powers, and she is turning to witchcraft in order to save her child. So yeah, looking into these lyrics, I mean, we're starting in the middle of a story, so it's starting right away with the question, where is the light and the reason? Light and truth and gospel truth and reason and things like that were seen to have come from the church at that time. That was what was being proclaimed, but Lilian is not feeling any of that. Where is the mercy of God? Have we been cast to damnation? Have we been banished to dark? So she's obviously feeling hunted. She's feeling targeted. And then here we get into some of the fantasy elements of his story. They say that the head wolf has come, driving his forces to battle, driving his forces to war. Maybe that's just a story that the White Christ and the witch hunter were just telling to the people to kind of get them scared. Hey, there's a wolf leader and he's going to come get us all. He's going to steal your kids.
Hide your kids, hide your wife.
And again, if this is from the perspective of Lilian, she's basically saying, well, they say that the head wolf has come. Like that's like what their stated reason is for this whole witch hunt, but I'm just trying to save my child. But yeah, she's seeing it as they're chained by the shackles of Christ. So Christ to her is not freedom that he describes in his own words. He is a form of bondage and shackles. Now that it's saying her in the third person, I ask her to place her trust on me. This is probably happening from the perspective of the guy, again, that's helping her. And then again, we get kind of the ironic sentiment of the grace of the true God and the light of the Christ, said in a way that shows that this guy does not see it as true grace or true light. He sees it as a burden. She sees it as a burden. She's fleeing from it. So obviously the story is being told in her favor, and the witch hunters are the ones who are wrong. But it's interesting because she's been presented with this false display of the grace of God, which might be, unjust trials and things like that. But because of that, now she's abandoning the only real source of light. She again says at the end, basically, I don't care. I'm going to live in the shades. I'm going to choose night instead of day. I'm going to choose darkness instead of light. But it causes her to abandon the only source of actual freedom, actual peace, actual grace, and light that does come from Christ, even if it's being misrepresented here by the witch hunter and the priest and things like that. And looking from a Christian perspective, if Lilian really did have a change of heart and wanted to turn from her sin and seek God for forgiveness, she absolutely would have been forgiven, regardless of what she did. And here we see the thorny aspect of temptation, because she thought she was doing something good and trying to help her child, right? But she turned to an option that God forbids when she turned to witchcraft. When we choose the paths that we think are best, we're almost always wrong in an ultimate sense, even if we're doing something good in the moment. I think a great example in the Bible is when Saul goes to a witch to find out what God wants him to do next in this ongoing war with the Philistines. He had tried sacrifices, he had waited for a word from the prophets, and he got nothing. He was left without anything. And rather than waiting on the Lord, he gets impatient, decides to go to a witch and asks her to bring up Samuel. The witch pulls up Samuel from her Rolodeath and gets scared that it's actually him, because she's used to like being a tricksy charlatan and conjuring little things and faking the whole thing. But God allows Samuel to come visit Saul and give him some words. So Samuel basically roasts him, telling him that the reason he wasn't hearing from the Lord is because he kept disobeying the Lord. It all came back to actually one command that Saul had failed to carry out, and that led to a cascade of compromise and sins and punishments. So this sounds like a pertinent warning that Lilian should have heeded.
So you can imagine my frustration when nobody would heed of what when no one headed.
There's no guarantee that she would have gotten everything she wanted if she hadn't turned to witchcraft, that her child would have been safe and everything would have just worked out fine if she turned to God. But the fact that she chose to walk away belies a heart that was seeking its own path rather than God's. And that is ultimately where all of our problems originate. Now, the second aspect, like I said, deals with the other people that were unfairly and unjustly swept up in this tide of accusations and witchcraft trials and other things like that. And because I'm an American Christian, I want to pivot a little bit and talk about the Salem witch trials that were going on around the same time as this album. And it's also relevant to me because so many times when people hear the word Puritan, myself included, growing up in public school, they think of the superstitious idiots that were just burning ladies. They didn't like ladies that were a little too good at like medicine and like, wow, how'd you heal that guy? It must be a witch, burn her.
How do you know she is a witch? She looks like one.
People today view witches of the past as basically the benevolent underdogs that were just trying to do their own thing, but then they're forced to protect themselves with dark magic and hexes because they weren't allowed to mix their cilantro in peace. And the people who tell these stories usually have a disdain for historical Christianity that comes out pretty clearly. But I'm partial to Christianity and the Puritans, so I want to go through a few details of those Salem witch trials. I'm going to be pulling from a guy named Steve Wilkins. He gave a few lectures in a series on the first 350 years of American history. So this is from some of that. First, the witch trials only lasted about 6 months. I'm going to do my best not to try to whitewash anything because I'm partial, but to consider a 6-month period as like the summation of what the Puritans were all about doesn't seem very fair to me. Second, in America, I found this really interesting. Not a single one of the people condemned were burned. Their capital punishments were all pretty much hangings. Again, that fact alone doesn't make it better if they were unjustly condemned, but I do think it's an important fact nonetheless. Third, there were only 100 trials that actually occurred in America during this time. There were thousands going on in Europe, but America only had 100. And fourth, not a single one of the accused ever confessed to the crime of witchcraft. This is one of the points that I found the most compelling because, as one Puritan, Cotton Mather, said, if multiple people are sentenced to death, you would expect some of them to confess, some of them to ask forgiveness from God and the people around them, and to try to die without the burden of that lie on their hearts. But none of them did, which is very interesting. Because of that specifically, where Cotton Mather recognized like nobody is confessing to this, that gave him a lot of uneasiness about the trials in general. There was an increased interest in the occult at the time, but he didn't think that that meant that we could just be unfair in how we dealt with these people, accusing people, bringing them in. Another idea that he had is that this whole thing was basically a successful attack from the devil, trying to get good Christian people to turn on themselves, and that pairs really well with the line in one of their songs, The Witch Hunter, that goes, as if Lucifer didn't have his hand in these acts of horror happening in this country. So Cotton Mather ultimately attributed it all to people's indifference toward God. He said, religion brought forth prosperity, and the daughter destroyed the mother. People had so many blessings and so much light and so much truth during this time, and they took that all for granted, and they forgot to give him thanks, as Romans 1 talks about. So this is a wonderful reminder for us to do just that, and to pray that we would hold to his truths instead of to the whatever hysteria is going on in the moment. Even if you are a Christian like me, even if you are on the side of people who obey the Bible in a real sense and actually follow the real God and don't just use it as a power play and things like that. Even if you're on that side, I hope you can see the value in a song like this that makes us think about atrocities from the past, makes us think about why those things happen and what the consequences are when we turn away from God, and that it would motivate you to turn to Him all the more. Be thankful to Him every day, and never look to your own understanding. Lean not on your own understanding. So I hope you got something out of this today. A little history lesson that I didn't expect to ever give on this channel necessarily, but yeah, it was fun. Hope that was helpful for you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. I didn't forget to record again. I would never do that. Being able to actually exist in a whole life, not just a partial life where you're only part werewolf and you can't transform all the time. You can transform all the time in Christianity. I'm not going there. I think that's better. Future self. Okay.